Okay guys, so far we've looked at the basic elements of design, and today I will be talking about principles of design. Okay. The word composition refers to the combination of multiple parts into a unified whole. A well-composed design is where line, shape, texture, value, and color work together well. Opposing elements contribute to strength rather than confusion. So basically, all the assignments that we've done so far, we've played around with these different elements of design like line and shape and volume, textures, value and color, and the way you compose them and put them together on a sheet to design your ideas refers to the composition of the image, because you are the ones who decide where you would like to position certain elements or how the space on the surface that you're working on needs to be used. Now, one of the first principles of design that we'll be looking at today is unity and variety. Unity, as we all know, refers to similarity, oneness, togetherness. Variety refers to difference. And when combined effectively, unity and variety can lead to the creation of compositions that are cohesive and energetic. This is a very important point because cohesion refers to being able to unify elements that look diverse. So it literally is a very important principle of design because it allows the design from not looking chaotic. So it's very important to have that intention when you're approaching making a design, to remember that you should be able to unify the different elements. Here you have an example of an image where unity and variety have been balanced very well. So when you look at the image, the first thing that you notice is all the umbrellas that are arranged in a diagonal position. So they echo each other's position. Then you have the grains in the sand that emphasize that position again. And then you've got the waves and the coastal line, which is also again all at that same angle. So that emphasizes the unity in the composition. Okay, and the repetition of the different umbrella also leads to unity. Now, what creates variety in the design is the sailboat that you see at the edge of the coast, the group of bathers that are huddled around that red umbrella, which also is an element that adds variety. And that red umbrella is also the focal point of the image where it pulls us into the painting. Okay, so here you have two images, one on the left side, which is a drawing of the sea using graphite on paper, and the right image is a collage. Now, the one on the left is a very unified drawing of waves. It's a very contemplative image, and it has a hypnotic effect because of the repetition of the waves and the fact that their lines are laid out in a horizontal manner. It just emphasizes unity and calmness. The image on the right, when you first look at it, it appears very conflicted, and there's lots of text that's broken about and placed in the image amongst the different visuals. So it is basically, it has been created to reflect the tumultuous economic and political conditions after World War I. It suggests chaos, and it's a very successful image in the sense that it looks chaotic. Therefore, it is reflecting a chaotic environment. Excessive unity can be monotonous, excessive variety can be chaotic. Gestalt principle. Visual information is understood holistically before it is studied in detail. Now, this is basically a theory or strategy that artists and designers use when composing or making a design, where they analyze the entire puzzle of the image and then its specific parts. And there are 6 aspects to this particular theory. Okay, the first is grouping. Now, here we are confronted with 3 different diagrams, okay, containing shapes. In the first rectangle on the extreme left, we see 2 groups being formed, one by the shapes floating on the top and one by the shapes floating at the bottom. So you see that here, that's the first group and that's the second group. And the reason why that grouping is occurring, it's because of the distance between them. So our eye visually divides that whole visual into 2 separate parts. So here grouping is occurring by location. Okay, in the second one, we group the shapes according to the orientation because all the shapes are in a diagonal format. And as a result, our eye, it looks at the diverse shape, but it also connects them through its orientation. And in the third one, the grouping occurs through the shape itself. So you'll look at that image and you'll see circles, squares, and triangles, but then immediately your eye searches for all the squares in the image when you spot one square, and then it'll do the same for the triangles, and then it will do the same for the circles. So our eyes will group these shapes basically according to their shape. Okay, here is a miniature painting from India called Rama and Lakshmana bound by arrow snakes. Now, miniature paintings basically run like comic strips, but there's a lot of detail involved in their making and in the techniques that are used. Now, when we look at this image, firstly, we see the whole composition. Then our eyes slowly start adjusting to the different elements, and we divide the composition into 3 different sections. The one on the left here, the one in the middle, and then the one on the right. So we subdivide this composition into 3 parts, okay? Then we further divide each compartment into subdivisions. So for instance, you'll see the cluster of monkeys on the left-hand side over here, right? And in the middle, you'll see these men on horses. And then on the right, you will see a group of men gathered at the top. So you slowly start noticing all these particular details one by one. And you'll also notice that the third box is divided into 3 more boxes, right? So 1, 2, 3. So this is how our eyes adjust to a very complex image, and we start breaking it down into parts to basically understand what the image is saying. And this painting is basically telling a very complex story of prophecy, magical transformation, imprisonment, and escape, like a comic book. Containment is a unifying force made by an outer edge or by a boundary within an image. Now, when you look at image A, you'll see the shapes freely floating, but the moment you add a border around it, as you do in B and C and D, it contains the different shapes, and as a result, it acts as a unifying element, okay? Now here you're presented with a photograph, and the photograph, it contains it involves containment happening at different levels. So first you see the outer edge of the photo, which is the frame. Then the second level of containment that happens is through the curtains, because the curtains contain the shape. And then you have the face, sorry. And then you have the face, which acts as a container as it contains all the different logos on this person's face. So, as I mentioned, containment in this photograph is happening on 3 different levels. And containment, it enhances unity. It's a unifying force. Repetition occurs when the same visual element or effect is used over and over again. For instance, you have this bracelet here, okay? And you'll see different patterns and motifs being repeated. You have a spiral in one section, you have an undulating line, you have a sphere, and then you have at least one triangular shape. So once these shapes are constantly repeated in different segments of this bracelet, that repetition also enhances unity. Proximity refers to the distance between visual elements. Fusion takes place when shapes and volumes are so close together that they share common edges. So in image A, you'll see 2 shapes or 2 squares very close together, and because of their closeness, it increases unity. In image B, there is more distance between the squares, and hence that reads as separate events. And then in image C, you'll see the shapes sharing common edges, and as a result of being so close together, and it results in the creation of new shapes. Now, this famous painting by Michelangelo called Creation of Adam is a very good example of how proximity has been used to animate a painting. So you have Genova's hand on the right, and you have Adam's hand on the left, and the distance between their fingers is just about right to animate the spark that is created in this image. Had the fingers been further apart, it wouldn't have created that impact for the viewer. And had they touched, it would have also, again, left a very dull impression on the viewer, because there's no expectation or anticipation about something that's about to happen. Continuity is the connection among different parts of a composition. Actual continuity is where each shape touches an adjoining shape. Implied continuity is mental connections being formed between different parts. So here you have a painting by Bridget Riley where you see almost like two wheels or 1.5 wheel made by blocks of different colors. And the curving lines and shape, they flow from one circle to the next, creating actual continuity because those elements are touching each other. And the color distribution, or the manner in which the colors have been placed in this image, they reflect implied continuity. And as a result, it sort of animates the wheel. You can almost imagine seeing it in motion. Closure refers to the tendency of the mind to connect fragmentary pieces of information to produce a unified whole. For instance, you have this portrait of Beethoven, and when your eyes recognize the subject, which is Beethoven, then you start noticing the details, that it's constructed out of a series of words that are forming sentences, and the words can be broken down into letters. And the proximity of the text, how it's equally placed and close enough, it acts as a unifying force, and it unifies the text to create the illusion of a face. Here is an example of a poster for a very famous play called The Turn of the Screw, where multiple fragments of information are being unified through pattern, where multiple fragments of information are being unified through containment, where you have the text and the visual being divided into two separate parts in the poster. And the first rectangle contains the text, so your eye is able to actually figure out the text, which is written in a sort of distorted manner. It's placed a little haphazardly. And then you have the text at the bottom unified through the container, which is the frame around it, unifying the text and the face. And then once you look at the image holistically, you can sort of figure out that this is a poster for a play that alludes to some drama or suspense because of the distorted expression of this child as well. It seems like it's something that would put you on edge. Patterns and grids. Patterns are any visual element that is repeated systematically. Grids are a series of intersecting lines. Both patterns and grids can be used to create containment, increase continuity, strengthen proximity, and encourage closure, therefore increasing compositional unity. Here is an example of Mona Lisa arranged in a grid by Andy Warhol, and it's an example of how pattern has been used, which is the repetition of the image, and then also the grid-like format that unifies the entire image.